Life with my grandmother was hell.
Come on, Indian monkey dance. Dance! It's what your people are good at. Dance!
I would dance in tears. She made me aware of the fact that I was adopted. I didn't let my parents know that she'd told me, but I felt so bad. Whenever they weren't home, my grandma would only let me watch Indian movies and listen to Indian music.
Your biological parents hated you. They abandoned you at the orphanage. My son is going to disown you when that barren witch finally gives him a child. You're going to be abandoned.
I was always crying. I began to fall back on my academics. I stopped talking to my friends at school because my grandma said they were also going to leave me one day. I became quiet and withdrawn. Hi there. My name is Suly. I live with my American parents, but my biological parents were Indians. Well, my parents got married at ages 25 and 23. They decided to pause childbirth and enjoy life alone a little. Well, 2 years after their marriage, they decided to try for a child, and that's where the problems began. My mom had issues with her womb, so she had to undergo a surgery. When my dad's parents heard about it, things didn't go well. My granddad was cool with it, and even sympathized with my mom, but my grandma didn't take it lightly.
What did you do with yourself during your school days, huh? Did you abort so much that you now have issues with your womb? I thought you were a good girl.
Stop it, Mom. Liv is not like that, and you know it. You're being unnecessarily disrespectful.
What? Are you insulting your mother now because of your wife?
Where's that coming from, Mom? I didn't even insult you.
Well, as you must have guessed, my mom felt so sad about it. She stood behind my dad, crying. My grandma had always treated her well. It pained her to see how the woman suddenly switched, and she blamed herself for it.
I'm sorry, Mother. I promise you I wasn't a loose girl. I didn't date anyone until Ken asked me out. I swear to you, this just happened to be my situation. Tell that to a fool, not me. You want to have surgery, right? Go on. I dare you to not have my son's child after that surgery.
Mom, you're being insensitive. She's gonna have to be on medication after the surgery. I'm fine with it whenever we have kids. You have no right to pressurize her.
My mom underwent the surgery, and it went well. For a whole year, she had to be on medication. My grandmother didn't make things easy for her. Every week, she would go over to my parents' house and lash at my mom. My dad stood up for his wife whenever he was home, and at times when he wasn't, all my mom would do is cry while my grandma insulted her. After another year, my mom still didn't have any children. This time, she didn't have any issue, and neither did my dad. My mom's mother had passed away, but her dad was supportive of them. Same with my dad's father, but my grandmother continued troubling them.
You're a barren woman. I regret agreeing when Ken said he wanted to marry you. You don't deserve to be a part of our family.
Mom, she's as important to me as you are. Maybe even more, okay? This is my wife, my life partner. You better stop bothering her.
My grandma didn't stop. She continued until my parents were forced to opt for adoption. They'd thought that would make her happy, but it was even the opposite.
Adoption? Ken, how can you stupidly let this barren woman push you to adopt a child? My son has been bewitched.
Excuse me? I'm not barren, and I didn't bewitch Ken. We both agreed to this because of you. The doctor advised us to wait because we both have no problems. You're not making it easy for us, Mom. Don't you ever call me that. I'm not your mother. Your stupid mother is dead. Give my son children.
My mom was even more broken, especially hearing how my grandma brought up her late mother. My dad comforted her in the best way he could. After 3 months, they went to an orphanage to process the adoption. When they found me, I was only a month old. My parents fell in love with me the moment they landed eyes on me, and I was picked. The process was quite long, as I was only an infant. Eventually, they got me and named me Suly. For the first 3 years after my adoption, my grandmother refused to come see me. She stopped talking to my dad. Even at the company, she refused to go there if my dad was present. It made my parents sad for a while, but they soon got used to it. Both my grandfathers loved me and showered me with love. My biological parents were both Indians, and I inherited their looks. It was easy to tell that I wasn't American. My parents and granddads didn't mind, but my grandmother did. She finally came to see me after 3 years. Well, my grandfathers thought she was being silly and spoke some sense into her.
Why does the child have a different look from us?
That's because she's Indian, Mom. Her biological parents are Indians.
Indian? I can't believe this. How can you both be so stupid? You got an Indian kid? What good is it going to do to you? She's a girl, ma'am. Not it, she. Please address her appropriately. Oh, I see you've grown wings. Don't forget that you still don't have a child of your own, barren woman.
Suly is our child, Mother. Can you watch your words?
I don't have anything to watch. This child is unaccepted. She's not one of us, and I hate her. How can you be so hostile to a child? You're being so unfair.
As I grew, I saw less of my grandmother. But the few times I saw her, she wasn't nice to me. On my 10th birthday, my parents threw a big party. Friends and extended families came, and I was happy. My parents had put me in a room while everyone outside prepared for my surprise. The room was dark, and I was blindfolded. I sat on a sofa, my view away from the door, waiting. I heard the door open, and I thought it was my mom. I sat waiting until I suddenly felt someone hit me hard, and I fell to the ground in pain. I heard the person run out, and I quickly looked. When they opened the door, I saw the person's face. It was my grandmother. Immediately after she ran out, my parents came in and turned on the light to see me crying on the floor. They were alarmed as they saw me bleeding. My dad immediately scooped me up and carried me out of the room. The party immediately ended because I was rushed to the hospital. They helped me dress the wound and gave me medications. I couldn't go to school for a whole week. My parents had no idea who would do that to me. They would involve the police, but the area I was in had no CCTV camera, so there was nothing to use in finding the culprit. My parents had to move to another house because they thought our house wasn't safe anymore. I knew who did it, but I couldn't tell. I knew my parents weren't on good terms with my grandma, so I thought telling them wouldn't be nice. I became scared of my grandmother. It was even more uncomfortable for me when she suddenly made up with my parents and began visiting our house regularly. She encouraged my mom to resume work after 6 months, promising to help with looking after me. I wanted to tell my mom how scared and uncomfortable I was, but I couldn't. Not after seeing how happy my mom was about resuming work again. Life with my grandmother was hell.
Come on, Indian monkey dance. Dance! It's what your people are good at. Dance!
I would dance in tears. She made me aware of the fact that I was adopted. I didn't let my parents know that she'd told me, but I felt so bad. Whenever they weren't home, my grandma would only let me watch Indian movies and listen to Indian music.
Your biological parents hated you. They abandoned you at the orphanage. My son is going to disown you when that barren witch finally gives him a child. You're going to be abandoned.
I was always crying. I began to fall back on my academics. I stopped talking to my friends at school because my grandma said they were also going to leave me one day. I became quiet and withdrawn. I stopped eating as much as I used to, leading to me growing lean. I also began wearing baggy clothes that covered my thighs because my grandma told me I was shapeless, and the scar she gave me was ugly. On my 11th birthday, I refused to have a party no matter how much my parents begged me. I was scared of getting attacked again by my grandmother. My parents noticed the changes and felt bad about it. They tried to pull me out of whatever was bothering me, but it didn't work. Eventually, my mom paused working to look after me. I was free from my grandmother for a while, but I still didn't change. In fact, I became worse. My mom soon had to take me to a therapist, and I began taking sessions twice a week. One day, when my mom was away on a date with my dad, my grandmother visited us. I began crying immediately when I saw her. She smiled and resumed taunting me. She said my parents were taking me for therapy because they thought I was going insane. She told me they would soon return me to the orphanage. I cried so much until I fainted. My grandmother left the house. It was one of the maids who helped me return to consciousness. I got even worse, but my parents never left me. About 10 months later, my mom got pregnant. After nearly 14 years of their marriage, she was finally having her own child.
You're going to be abandoned soon, Indian girl. They'll hate you and only love their child.
I decided to confront my parents. I would beg them to not abandon me. The right time didn't come until my 12th birthday. They'd managed to convince me to let them throw a party. After cutting my cake, I requested to give a speech. My parents were all smiles, but my grandmother was busy mouthing the word abandoned to me. I began crying. I love you so much, Mom and Dad. I'm thankful that you adopted me even though I'm not American, and my real parents abandoned me. Please, don't leave me. I'm going to do anything you want. I'm going to love your child when it's born. Please, don't take me back. My parents were alarmed, as well as the guests and my grandparents. I could see the fear in my grandmother's eyes. My parents rushed to me and comforted me. They asked how I knew about my adoption, and I told them. I said into the mic everything I'd been going through in the hands of my grandmother. Everyone was shocked. My dad's eyes were red with anger.
How dare you, Mom? Are you crazy? How could you do that to my child? How can you be so evil? You're her grandmother.
You must be a fool to think that all Indians do is dance. I can't believe you.
At your age, you should have some sense in your head. I can't believe you've spent 2 years bullying a child.
She hid her face in shame as everyone talked down on her. My dad asked her to leave, but his dad stopped her.
You have to apologize to Suly and take back your words about Indians.
You must also dance in front of us the way you made my daughter dance.
In shame, she went on her knees and apologized to me. She also took back her words and danced in tears. It was so embarrassing for her. Unfortunately for her, the video of her dancing like an Indian went viral and people often made fun of her. My parents refused to associate with her afterward and cut her off. My grandfather moved out of the house they shared and got a different house where he ordered his security to refuse her entry. Eventually, she fell into depression, but nobody cared. She was alone for 3 years, and during those years, we often heard rumors of how people slashed her tires and wrote old racist slurs on her front lawn with paint. One day, she died in her room. Her body wasn't discovered until 3 days later, when my grandfather sent someone to ask her to leave the house. She was buried ordinarily, and the house was sold off for peanuts. As for me, my therapist and the birth of my brother helped me recover. I was happy with my family. My hatred for my grandmother didn't reduce even after she died, and I think I'm going to hate her until my death. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.